When my younger sister looked me straight in the eye in front of 40 guests and said, "There's no room for you here. Maybe you should try that dirty pub across the street," she expected me to cry. My mother even chimed in with a cruel smirk, telling me it suited me better anyway. They wanted to embarrass me. They wanted to strip away whatever dignity I had left after carrying the financial weight of our family for years. So, I just smiled, turned on my heel, and walked straight across the street into that dimly lit pub. What my sister and mother didn't know was who owned that dirty pub, or why every VIP guest at her luxury baby shower was about to walk out of her venue to join me. Follow my story to the very end to see how their pride crumbled, and comment below with the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Emma Thompson. I'm 36 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the invisible safety net holding my family together. As a structural engineer, my job is literally to design foundations, to ensure that under pressure, things don't collapse. I guess I took that mindset home with me, acting as the quiet backbone for a family that constantly treated me like an afterthought. My younger sister, Vanessa, was the exact opposite. She was flashy, materialistic, and spoiled rotten by our mother, Evelyn. To Mom, Vanessa was the golden child who deserved the world, while I was just the reliable workhorse who paid the bills. While I spent my 30s wearing simple clothes and saving money, Vanessa spent her life chasing a high society image she couldn't afford. Over the years, to keep peace in our fragile family dynamic, I quietly stepped in whenever Vanessa got into financial trouble. When she wanted a down payment for her dream car, I paid it. When her luxury apartment rent was late, I covered it. I even secretly bankrolled the heavy venue deposit for her upcoming events just to spare her the embarrassment of being turned away. I never asked for credit, and I never expected a grand thank you. All I wanted was basic respect. But to my mother and sister, my generosity was never seen as kindness. They mistook my quiet nature for weakness, completely unaware that the dependable foundation they were leaning on was about to walk away. The news broke at Sunday dinner like a royal announcement. Vanessa was pregnant, and naturally, she wasn't planning just any standard baby shower. She wanted a lavish, high-society event at La Toile, an ultra-exclusive, five-star restaurant downtown known for catering to the city's elite. Mom was practically glowing, raving about how this would cement Vanessa's place among her wealthy new in-laws. What neither of them mentioned, of course, was that the restaurant had required a massive upfront catering guarantee, a balance I had quietly settled 3 weeks prior when Vanessa called me crying about a temporary banking error. When the formal invitations were mailed out, everyone received elegant, foil-embossed cards weeks in advance. I received mine 3 days before the event, tucked inside a plain envelope with a handwritten sticky note attached. It read, "Emma, please dress appropriately. David's family has high standards, and we don't want any eyesores in the photos." I swallowed my pride, choosing to see past the passive-aggressive jab. On the day of the shower, I wore a tasteful navy dress, styled my hair neatly, and bought a high-end designer stroller from Vanessa's registry that had cost me over $800. When I walked through the grand crystal doors of La Toile, the room was stunning, filled with fresh orchids and women in $1,000 dresses. But as soon as Mom and Vanessa spotted me carrying the massive wrapped box, their faces didn't show gratitude. Instead, they exchanged a look of cold, sharp disdain. I carried the heavy, wrapped stroller past tables overflowing with champagne flutes and floral centerpieces. The room was buzzing with chatter from David's wealthy relatives, corporate executives, and local socialites. I scanned the floor for the main family table, assuming I'd be seated near my mother and sister. But as I checked the elegant place cards lining the long dining tables, my name was nowhere to be found. I checked the secondary tables near the back. Nothing. Sensing my confusion, Vanessa stepped away from her mother-in-law and walked over, her silk dress rustling with every deliberate step. Mom followed right behind her, folding her arms with a smirk. "Is there a problem, Emma?" Vanessa asked, her voice carried across the quiet room. "I think my place card got misplaced," I said softly, trying to keep the conversation private. "Where should I sit?" Vanessa let out a sharp, theatrical sigh, loud enough for the nearby guests to turn and look.
Oh, Emma.
We had a strict seating limit for VIPs, and honestly, the guest list was just completely full. You really should have RSVP'd earlier. I paid the final catering balance 3 weeks ago. Vanessa, I whispered, my jaw tightening. You knew I was coming. Mom stepped forward, casually taking the $800 stroller from my hands and setting it aside. Let's be realistic, Emma. You don't fit in with this crowd. Why don't you try that dirty pub across the street? She gestured toward the dingy, neon-lit window visible through the floor-to-ceiling glass. It suits you perfectly. A few soft sneers rippled through the surrounding tables. Vanessa smirked, waiting for me to break down or make an embarrassing scene. Instead, I swallowed the sting, looked them both dead in the eye, and smiled. I'll do that, I said calmly. I turned on my heel and walked out the grand glass doors, leaving them standing in their polished, superficial world. I pushed open the heavy oak door of the pub across the street, the bell above chiming softly as the cool afternoon air yielded to the warm, rich scent of polished mahogany and vintage leather. What my sister and mother called a dirty pub was actually the Old Sovereign, a historic, upscale establishment that served as a private sanctuary for the city's top architects, developers, and commercial investors. It didn't need flash or neon gimmicks. Its exclusivity was built on quiet power. As I walked toward the long, burnished bar, a familiar voice called out my name. Emma? What on earth are you doing dressed up on a Saturday afternoon? It was Julian, sitting in a leather booth near the back fireplace. Julian wasn't just a close friend from my university days. He was a principal investor in major urban restoration projects across the state and the co-owner of this very establishment. Sitting across from him was Arthur Vance, one of the most prominent real estate developers in the region, a man whose firm spent millions on commercial contracts every year. I just got escorted out of a baby shower across the street, I said with a slight laugh, sliding into the booth next to them. Julian's eyes narrowed in confusion, but Arthur's face lit up with immediate recognition. Emma, I was hoping I'd run into you this week. We're finalizing the plans for the waterfront revitalization project, and your structural team is at the top of our list. Within minutes, the sting of Vanessa's cruelty evaporated. Julian ordered a bottle of top-shelf scotch, and the three of us dove into deep, engaging conversations about upcoming city developments. I wasn't an unwanted guest sitting near the kitchen doors anymore. I was a respected professional sitting at the most influential table in the room, enjoying the kind of genuine respect my family had always denied me. Through the large, frosted glass window of the pub, I had a clear view of the floor-to-ceiling glass dining room at Latoile. The party across the street was in full swing, but it didn't take long for things to shift. Arthur Vance took a sip of his scotch, casually glancing out the window, before his eyebrows shot up. Wait a minute, isn't that David's father over there? Richard Sterling. I turned to look. Sitting at the head table near Vanessa was Richard Sterling, the senior partner of a major financial firm and the primary backer of David's business ventures. Julian chuckled, recognizing him immediately. Richard comes in here all the time. He's been trying to set up a meeting with Arthur for 3 months regarding the new commercial zoning project. Without hesitating, Arthur pulled out his phone, dialed a number, and gestured toward our table. Across the street, I watched Richard Sterling pull his phone from his jacket pocket, answer it, and look directly over at the Old Sovereign. His eyes locked onto Arthur, then onto Julian, and finally settled on me. I raised my glass in a polite, subtle toast. Richard's face registered instant realization. He knew who Arthur Vance was, and he certainly knew my reputation as the lead structural engineer on the city's largest municipal projects. Within 5 minutes, Richard stood up from his seat at the baby shower, whispered something to his wife, and excused himself. 3 other high-profile investors sitting at Vanessa's main table followed right behind him. They didn't care about baby gifts or pastel decorations. They cared about power, access, and multi-million-dollar deals. Vanessa and my mother watched in absolute shock as their most important, prestigious guests walked right out the front doors of Latoile, crossed the street, and walked straight into the dirty pub to join my table. The quiet atmosphere of the Old Sovereign shattered when the heavy oak door burst open. Vanessa stormed in, her face flushed red with anger, her designer heels clicking loudly against the hardwood floor. My mother marched right behind her, glaring at the room like a drill sergeant who'd lost control. The rest of the pub fell silent as they ignored the patrons and headed straight for our booth, where Richard Sterling, Arthur Vance, and Julian were engaged in a lively business discussion. "What is the meaning of this, Emma?" Vanessa shrieked, completely dropping her refined persona. "You lured my guests away from my baby shower. You're doing this on purpose just to ruin my day." Mom stepped in, pointing a finger at my face. "You selfish, jealous girl. You couldn't handle being excluded, so you had to cause a scene across the street? Get up and tell these gentlemen to go back." Before I could say a word, Julian stood up from the booth, his broad frame towering over both of them. His voice was cool, calm, and completely commanding. "Excuse me, ladies. First of all, this is a private club, and you are creating a disturbance. Second, no one was lured anywhere. These gentlemen are here discussing a multi-million-dollar commercial expansion." He smiled coldly. "An expansion, I might add, that is being built on property owned entirely by Emma." Vanessa froze, her mouth dropping open. "What? Emma isn't just an engineer," Julian continued smoothly. "She's the majority stakeholder in the commercial trust that owns this entire block, including the building Latoile operates out of." Mom's face drained of color as she turned to me. "Emma, is this true?" I took a slow sip of my drink, looking at my sister and mother without a drop of anger left in me. "It is. And since you made it clear I don't fit into your VIP world, I've decided to stop trying." "Oh, and Vanessa? That pending financial subsidy I set up with the venue management to cover your remaining balance? I just canceled it from my phone 5 minutes ago. You'll need to settle the full bill yourself before you leave today." The panic in Vanessa's eyes was absolute. She looked at her mother-in-law, then back at the restaurant manager who was already crossing the street with a high-figure final invoice in hand. There were no more excuses, no secret bank transfers for me to save her, and no golden safety net to fall back on. David's family saw my mother and sister for exactly who they were: shallow, arrogant, and financially irresponsible. In the weeks that followed, I cut off all financial ties completely. Vanessa had to downsize her lavish lifestyle to settle her event debts, and Mom finally had to face the reality that her golden child was fully accountable for her own choices. For the first time in 36 years, I stopped trying to earn love through sacrifice. I focused entirely on my engineering firm, my commercial investments, and the genuine relationships with people like Julian and Arthur who valued my mind, not my wallet.